Hey there friend, Hector here from StrongestTech.com with this week's Movement Monday for the week. So today we're going to be closing out this three-part series where we're covering some overhead mobility to improve your military press. So one of the most important aspects is last week we covered is thoracic extension, okay? So our thoracic spine should be able to do three actions. It should be able to extend, it should be able to flex, and it should be able to rotate, okay? Those are going to come in, those are really important when it comes to, doing pressing movements overhead, whether it's snatching a kettlebell, pressing a barbell or a kettlebell, even doing push-ups. So we want to make sure we have that adequate mobility. So the thing that we're really focusing on over this series was thoracic extension, and last week we went over using the foam roll and being able to pretty much wrap our upper back around the foam roll, and that's going to really help to open you up here thoracically. So what we're going to be progressing on today is all you're going to need is a couple of things. So you're going to need some kind of like stability ball. If you don't have a stability ball, it's not absolutely necessary. You can use a chair, or you can use a bench, or you can use your couch, okay? But what we're going to work on now is we're going to work on that overhead position, and then we're going to lock it in using a pair of really light kettlebells, okay? So I want you to imagine that we went through, we just finished going through that foam roll session, okay? We used the foam roll, getting the upper back, and extending our body around the back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use some kind of stability ball, again, like I said, a chair or a bench, and this is pretty much like a lat stretch, but it's also going to help you to get overhead. So one of the limiting factors to being able to lock a good overhead position is going to be tight pecs, tight lats. Those are the muscles that can possibly pull you into this forward, this rounded position, and this rounded position will usually stem from either our sport or activities, like let's say boxing, MMA, BJJ, specifically Jiu-Jitsu, because sometimes you're in this posture like this, but also just your everyday lifestyle. Maybe if you work a desk, it can kind of put you in this rounded position. So one of the things we want to focus on is being able to extend in this upper back position. And we're going to go through that here with the stability ball. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to be on our knees, okay? And from here is this is why I like this the stability ball, is you can kind of roll out into this position. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to get on all fours. And what I'm going to do is my hands, I'm pretty much going to put like my thumbs together like so, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll myself out just like this, okay? And once I meet like my first barrier, like for me, which is right about this position, is I'm going to breathe through it, okay? And what I'm trying to do is, for one, this is going to give me a really big stretch in the lat and in the pecs. I'm going to use my breath and try to drop my chest down towards the floor while keeping my elbows locked and my shoulders connected. So I'm not trying to let my shoulder I'm not trying to let my shoulder come out, and I'm not trying to bend my elbows. I'm trying to keep my elbows locked out straight, okay? So my thumbs are together, kind of like you're doing a field goal, okay? And I'm going to roll out, and for me, right about here is my, I start to feel a little bit of tightness, okay? So notice, I want to try to get my ears in line with my biceps, and possibly even a little lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to breathe. And I want you to notice one thing that I'm not doing to give me that added range of motion is I'm not extending through my lower back so that I can get my head lower, okay? It's a very common compensation. It's the equivalent of when you're pressing overhead and you run out of range of motion with the shoulder and you give up your lower back. That way you can get this false extension. Pretty much you'll be doing the same thing here. So once you run into this position where you can't go any further, you don't want to arch your lower back and kind of have this false sense of mobility. So you're pretty much robbing from your lower back and giving it to your upper back, and you don't want to do that. So what we want to do is we want to keep, and that's why I like to have my knees above 90 degrees, keep my lower back stable, okay, and then breathe here. And I'll roll myself a little bit further out. And now I'm in a pretty good position. My ears are in line, even slightly past my arms. And one little thing you can do from here is you can begin to do this little prying motion, side to side, and up and down. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So from here, once I find a pretty good overhead position like this, I'm going to open up like this. And what I'm doing is I'm really stretching this opposite side here. Now I'm going to do the other side. And then one more in the middle. Ooh. Man, that is just pretty intense. You'll feel this whole, you'll feel your entire lat stretch, and you really feel your upper back start to light up is once you get into this overhead position. So I look like this with my arms overhead. Now, if that is too intense for you, perhaps you can't even get into that hands closed together, because hands closed together, hands overhead requires actually requires some pretty good overhead mobility already. So if you're not ready for that, this is where like a chair or a bench could come into play, because the wider your arms go, you actually have more range of motion, okay? So what you could do is you could use 2 stability balls, and you can roll, get yourself in that position, or you can have a bench that's a lot wider, and you can put your hands out wider, okay? So I'll see if I can mimic that here on the stability ball. Is pretty much just kind of, instead of having your thumbs together, you'll have your hands a lot wider like this, okay? And you can start to achieve more or less that same, the same result, because your arms are wider, and that's going to allow you to have a better range of motion. So if you're really restricted in that upper back and even in the pecs and the lats, take your arms wider. So a bench or 2 stability balls would really get the job done. And that's why I like the ball, because I can roll myself into position and I can kind of roll myself out. And that's why I really like the stability ball for this. So again, now that you've gone through that foam roll and you've worked on this upper back and this thoracic position, now you can progress to this lat stretch, okay? And using a stability ball or a bench or a chair. Next thing that we're going to do is, anytime that you increase range of motion, you always want to use strength or some kind of load to lock it in, okay? So that's another reason why we don't want to use weight training on top of a dysfunctional movement, because you kind of lock in that dysfunctional movement and you make it more dysfunctional. So now that we've kind of gained some really good range of motion, and we've got a really good overhead position, now we can start to load that and start to lock that in. So this is where we use a pair of our light kettlebells. So I'm going to get rid of this, okay, and I'm going to use 2 light bells here. And all I'm trying to do is achieve this overhead position. So I'm going to do this from a tall kneeling, which is basically in this kneeling position like so, all right? And what I'm going to try to do is, I'm going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to lock the bells out overhead, and I'm going to do a few different movements, okay? I'll bring the bells close together, I'll move them out a little bit, you can make little circles, and you can make circles the other direction. But basically, all that we're trying to do is we're trying to own the lockout position, okay? And then I'll show you from the side, we'll do just kind of like we did with the stability ball, where we did some of that prying, and we pried left to right. We're going to do the same exact thing with the bells, and we're going to start to kind of pry back and forth, and really challenge your body to lock that in. So what we're going to do is you're going to use 2 bells, okay, and we're going to achieve the overhead position, and we're going to breathe here, okay. And I'm trying to bring the bells pretty much close together to where they're clicking together. And I'm going to breathe. My elbows stay locked out, and my shoulders remain connected and down. Okay? From here, I can move the bells apart a little bit. I can bring them back together. Okay? You can make circles if you want, really little small circles. You can move circles in the other direction. You can do internal and external rotation. So I can turn the bells 45 degrees this way, where my palms almost face each other, and I can slightly turn them away. Don't go too far when you turn them in, because you don't want to lose the bells and they fall on top of your head. Okay? Now what I'm going to do, I'll turn sideways for this, is I'm going to do this little pumping and prying motion. And this is really going to challenge my upper back and that thoracic extension. So from here, I'm going to lead with my chest, come back, trying only to move from my thoracic. Ooh. Okay, and I'm not trying to move my hips at all. I'm just trying to create this little pumping and this little prying motion, like so. So you're really only limited by your imagination. You can do, like I said, you can do just internal and external rotation. You can pump the chest forward and backwards. You can bring the hands together. You can move them apart. And we're just trying to lock in that new added range of motion that we added using the stability ball and using the foam roll by bending our body pretty much around the foam roll. So that's this week's Movement Monday for the week. This is going to be tying in perfectly as we close out our technique of the week on the press, and even our workout of the week on the press. So obviously we have to have really good movement, really good mobility overhead to do things like pressing, because after the press series we'll be moving into a squat series and a snatch series, and being able to extend through your chest thoracically is going to be really important to have a really good squat. And then from there, we'll already solidified our overhead position, and that'll lead us into our snatch series that we've got coming up down the road too. So let me know if you have any questions or if you have any comments. Leave it in the comment section below. In the description, as I always do, I've got some free resources like our ebook and our blog posts, etc., where you can continue to follow some of the stuff that we're doing. So if you're enjoying these videos, you're enjoying the Movement Monday, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and check out any of the free resources that I have below. So I got to run. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I'm Hector with StrongestHec.com in this week's Movement Monday for the week.